For the longest time, the whole climate conversation was kind of stuck on if and why. But that's all changed. Today, the world's biggest companies aren't debating the problem anymore. They're actually building the solutions. So in this explainer, we're going to peel back the curtain and look at the real-world blueprints companies are using to tackle decarbonization and how they're turning one of the biggest challenges we face into a massive business opportunity.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to understand that the energy transition isn't just some policy goal or a headline you see on the news. It is one of the largest engineering projects in human history. We're talking about a physical transformation of everything, our power plants, our cars, all of it. And it's being built with steel and concrete and copper on a scale we've literally never seen before. So what does this massive physical job actually look like? Well, it kind of boils down to this one number. 25. So, what's that all about?
Well, what it means is that for this whole thing to work, we have to solve 25 core physical challenges. And look, we're not talking about small bumps in the road here. These are huge hurdles, involving everything from getting enough raw materials like lithium and copper to completely re-engineering how we make steel and cement, the very things our economy is built on.
All right, so first up, let's try to get our heads around what is basically a planet-sized to-do list.
And right at the heart of this massive to-do list is the power problem. The challenge of literally rewiring our world to run on electricity.
Okay, to really get how complicated this is, let's just think about one simple thing. We're trying to electrify everything, right? Including how we heat our homes with stuff like heat pumps. But just imagine this. What happens on the absolute coldest day of the year, when millions of people crank their heat at the exact same time?
And here's the chain reaction. That sudden demand for heat creates this enormous, sharp spike in electricity use. And our grids today, they just weren't designed for that, not even close. In a place like the US, it would actually flip the country's peak energy demand from the hottest summer days to the coldest winter ones. This isn't just a simple swap out. It means we need a totally different kind of grid, one that's way smarter and way more flexible.
Okay, so if the challenges are this huge, who on earth is going to solve them? Well, it turns out big business is stepping up in a really big way.
And here's where it gets really interesting. We all love to talk about those cool, nimble startups as the big innovators. But the climate transition, it's a game of scale. You need massive amounts of money, you need complex supply chains, and you need decades of experience building huge, expensive projects. That's why the big guys, the established companies, the incumbents, they're the ones who are becoming the most critical players.
And they're not just talking a big game. They are putting serious money on the table. How much? Get this, $683 billion.
So that's how much these big established companies poured into climate-focused businesses in just 4 years. But here's the real kicker. That's a 6-fold increase in that short period. This isn't just a trend, you guys. This is a flat-out acceleration of money into real, tangible solutions.
All right, so let's make this real. Let's look at 2 specific blueprints for how this reinvention is actually happening, from the factory floor to the highway. Let's start with a really tough one, steel. As the CEO of Tata Steel says here, the industry gets that it's a big part of the problem, but they are dead set on being part of the solution. So how are they actually pulling it off?
This is their game plan, and it's pretty smart. First up, they put in what's called an internal carbon price. This makes every single investment decision factor in the cost of emissions, pushing money toward greener tech. Second, and this is key, they're investing before the government makes them, building things like scrap-based steel plants now because they know that's the future. And third, they got everyone on the same page. They trained their top 300 leaders, including, crucially, union leaders, to make sure everybody was pulling in the same direction.
Okay, so we've talked about the heavy industry that literally builds our world. Now let's shift gears to something you see every day, the electric car. And as you're about to see, the climate story here has a few more twists and turns than you might think. Okay, so here's the deal with EVs. An electric car actually creates more emissions when it's being built than a regular gas car does, mostly because of that big battery. But, of course, once you're driving it, its emissions are way, way lower. So right from the start, the EV is in a kind of carbon debt that it has to pay off over its life on the road. So which one is actually greener? Well, it turns out the answer boils down to one single thing. How clean is the electricity you're using to charge it? Plain and simple, a car is only as clean as the power grid it plugs into. And this chart really shows you what that means in the real world.
If you're in a place with a super clean grid, like a lot of Europe, your EV is crushing it, saving 45 to 65% of emissions over its lifetime. But if you're in a place that's still burning a lot of coal for power, that same EV might only offer a tiny little advantage. So the main takeaway is this: the cleaner our power grids get, the bigger and bigger the win for electric cars becomes.
Which, of course, brings us to the big final question. How do we pay for all this? And for the companies making these huge bets, how do they make it profitable?
So one of the smartest tools companies are using is called a marginal abatement cost curve, or a MAC. The easiest way to think about it is as a decarbonization shopping list. It basically lines up every possible action a company can take to cut emissions, ranking them from the cheapest and easiest to the most expensive and difficult. This lets a company be super strategic, picking off the low-hanging fruit first to get the biggest bang for their buck on the way to net zero.
And at the end of the day, this all comes back to a really simple business idea, which the CEO of Ecolab sums up perfectly. For 100 years, his company has operated on the belief that efficiency and sustainability aren't just costs, they're opportunities. See, cutting waste, using fewer resources, that isn't just some nice thing to do for the planet. It's just plain good business.
And really, that's the big takeaway here. The debate part? That's over. We're in the doing phase now. The world's biggest companies aren't asking why they should act anymore. They are completely focused on the nuts and bolts of how to get it done. These blueprints, these plans for this huge transition, they aren't just ideas on paper. They're happening right now, in boardrooms and on factory floors all over the world. So the question for all of us has totally shifted. It's not why anymore, it's how fast.